What if everything you've been taught about healing is the very thing keeping you stuck? By the end of this video, you'll see why your pain isn't a flaw. It's the key you've been searching for. And the most shocking part? The lock you've been fighting to break was never your enemy. You wake up with a heaviness you cannot name, a silent gravity that pulls at the center of your chest and dares you to pretend it is only fatigue from another long week. You have followed every rule, checked every box, smiled through every meeting, told yourself it would finally click once the promotion landed, or the kids left for college, or your partner said the right words, yet the same hollow echo greets you in the quiet hours. The world keeps congratulating you for being capable, responsible, admirable, while some hidden narrator inside whispers that the applause is for a mask, not for the raw, trembling self you keep just out of sight. There is a private inventory you never write down. It includes the moments when a friend's success feels like proof of your secret failure, the sting when a casual remark unravels your confidence, the nights when laughter at dinner parties turns thin and metallic in your mouth. You scroll past curated joy on glowing screens, each image reflecting a version of life that seems to exist on the other side of a glass wall. You reach toward that bright surface, and your hand meets only the cool resistance of your own doubt. Behind the glass, you see ease, belonging, satisfaction. On this side, you count cracked promises and carry the suspicion that something in you is fundamentally off-key. You hear the unspoken verdict, not enough. You have tried discipline, gratitude journals, meditation apps whispered by gentle voices. You have tried the gym until your body ached, the diet until your willpower collapsed, the workshops that promised rewiring, rebirth, rebranding. Each method a fresh battering ram aimed at the same locked door. Every impact leaves a dent, but the hinges hold. The door stares back, silent, unyielding, as if informing you that you cannot break what was never meant to open from force. The exhaustion settles in your bones, thicker each year, until even the idea of trying again feels cruel. Shame threads through the ordinary moments. A meeting ends, and you replay the conversation, scanning for the instant where your voice betrayed the tremor of uncertainty. A family gathering drifts toward warmth, yet part of you performs rather than participates, waiting for the moment someone notices the crack in the veneer. At night, you lie in a dark room, cataloging old choices, predicting future regrets, negotiating with an inner critic that never sleeps. You wonder if everyone else is acting too, yet their performances seem effortless, while yours costs everything. Allow this truth to land. Nothing is wrong with your pain. That ache is older than the masks you wear, wiser than the self-help slogans pinned to your fridge. The emptiness is not evidence of failure. It is a signal that something real inside you refuses to be buried under productivity hacks and positive affirmations. It insists on being heard, even if it must speak through fatigue, anxiety, or numbness. That insistence is the pulse of life, demanding authenticity over comfort. If these words hit something real in you, subscribe to this channel. It helps this truth reach others who are ready to step beyond the noise and face what lives beneath it. Now breathe. Feel the weight you carry. Notice how quickly the mind moves to fix, to strategize, to break the lock once more. That impulse is familiar, almost automatic, yet it has never delivered freedom. Remain with the discomfort for a moment longer and let it say what it has always tried to say. The struggle is not a malfunction, it is a message. By the end of this video, you will understand why your pain is not a mistake, it is a key, and why breaking the lock has never worked. Imagine the door again. See its scratched surface. Remember every tool you have swung against it, every splintered theory, every motivational chant, every therapy session where you said the right things but left feeling hollow. The door still stands, yet on its face you now notice an outline, the faint impression of a key that perfectly matches the contours of your hidden self. The lock has never been external. It is molded to the shape of the parts of you you learned to exile, the anger you swallowed, the grief you postponed, the desire you dismissed as selfish, the doubt you condemned as weakness. You were taught to hammer those pieces into submission, to break the door instead of studying the lock's design. You were praised for compliance, rewarded for resilience, celebrated for silence. The culture told you that discomfort should be overcome quickly, that pain indicates error, that vulnerability can be optimized away. So you knocked at the door with the tools they sold you, and each failed strike confirmed the lie that you are broken. I am saying what others will not. The pain is not proof of deficiency, it is proof of life. The emptiness is the space where your repressed self waits for reunion. The shame is the echo of love withheld from the parts you rejected. You do not need another hammer. You need to recognize the outline on the lock as your own silhouette. Stay with me through the next parts of this journey, and the shape will grow clearer. For now, honor the feeling that rises in your chest, even if it trembles. The door is not your enemy. The door keeps the fragments of you safe until you are willing to carry them again. The lock is loyal to its design, refusing entry to anything that does not match your wholeness. The moment you stop swinging at the barrier and begin listening to the message behind it, the mechanism already starts to shift. This is not the ending. It is the first acknowledgement that the exhaustion means you have fought long enough. It is the invitation to step closer, not with force, but with curiosity. Let the silence settle. Let the words echo in the rooms you keep locked. Trust that the very ache you have judged is the password you have been seeking. The key is forming in your grasp, and the door has been waiting for its rightful shape. Positive thinking became the glittering decal slapped over every crack in the modern soul. It promised brightness on command, a synthetic sunrise summoned by affirmations spoken through clenched teeth. The doctrine sounded elegant. Adjust the lens, force light through it, and the darkness will retreat. What actually happened was quieter and crueler. Each forced smile pressed another layer of denial over unspoken grief. The inner critic, exiled to the basement, multiplied in the shadows, growing sharper for every hour it was ignored. When positivity failed to dissolve despair, the mind concluded not that the method was flawed, but that the self was. The wound deepened under the pressure of compulsory joy, turning the pursuit of happiness into proof of personal defect. The trap works because it silences the messenger. Pain arrives with information about unmet needs, fractured boundaries, ruptured memories. The moment a mantra demands the pain be reframed as triumph, the message vanishes, and only the sting remains. Eventually, positivity becomes a bright sticker slapped over a warning light on the dashboard. The engine still overheats. The driver just loses the right to admit it. What looks like optimism from the outside becomes a private indictment on the inside, a verdict that honest sorrow equals weakness. Over time, the body records the lie, storing tension in muscles and breath until fatigue and panic replace genuine feeling. The mind that cannot name its hurt begins to doubt its own reality, spiraling deeper into isolation while chanting scripted hope. Therapy was meant to offer sanctuary, yet too often it morphs into another stage on which the performance continues. The client arrives with rehearsed narratives, eager to prove insight, to satisfy an internalized audience that demands polish, even in confession. Metrics sneak through the door: progress charts, homework compliance, the polished arc of a success story in the making. The vulnerable parts sense surveillance and retreat. Sessions fill with clever analysis instead of raw revelation. The mask stays firmly in place, only now it wears the language of diagnosis and technique. A fresh hierarchy appears: the enlightened self versus the dysfunctional self, to be managed away. Emotional truth, messy and non-linear, loses the oxygen it needs to breathe. The hour ends with polite gratitude, and the deeper currents drift back underground, untouched. Books and audio programs stand stacked on bedside tables like a tower of promised resurrections. Each title asserts a new formula, a better habit loop, an ancient secret repackaged for immediate consumption. The intellect consumes these pages with earnest hunger, underlining sentences that glow with potential. Yet knowledge resides in the conscious mind, while the roots of suffering coil in the unconscious, beyond the reach of elegant prose. Reading about surrender is not surrender. Studying vulnerability is not vulnerability. The parts of the psyche that carry childhood dread, ancestral shame, or pre-verbal trauma do not speak in bullet points, and they cannot be coaxed out with clever metaphors alone. They answer to embodied presence, to slow witnessing, to the language of breath and sensation. Books remain useful lanterns, but they cannot walk the dark corridor on your behalf. Affirmations aim to overwrite the inner narrative, yet they can mutate into subtle gaslighting. A voice inside whispers, "I am unlovable," and the affirmation replies, "I am loved and abundant." The contradiction does not heal the wound, it shames the wound for speaking. Beneath the surface, the nervous system hears one message: your authentic feeling is unwelcome. Over time, the split widens between what is felt and what is declared. The psyche learns that truth must be disguised to earn belonging. Eventually, the affirmations sound empty, and their hollowness reinforces the original doubt. The conscious mind wonders why the formula worked for others, unaware that many are reciting the same lines over identical fractures, each believing they alone are defective. You didn't fail. The system was never designed to show you the whole truth. Here's why. Commercial wellness thrives on perpetual incompletion. If a single method resolved the core wound, the market would collapse. So solutions are offered that soothe enough to keep despair from boiling over, yet never pierce the subterranean roots. Positivity sells because it feels like momentum. Quick scripts sell because they promise clarity. Structured therapy sells because it offers measurable progress. None of these paths are inherently malicious, yet each becomes a revolving door when used to outrun the shadow. The culture depends on your discomfort to fuel consumption, your self-doubt to drive achievement, your fear of stagnation to maintain loyalty. You were given shining tools that could polish the surface, but never unlock the cellar. The deeper injury lies in the implication that healing is a linear ascent toward a perfected self. Perfection was defined by external metrics: productivity, serenity, confidence on demand. The very pursuit requires disowning the chaotic, impulsive, grieving parts that contradict the brand. The lock strengthens every time a disallowed feeling is pushed aside. Beneath the curated calm, the rejected parts gather like storm clouds, preparing the next surge of anxiety or rage to demand recognition. The cycle continues. Another book, another vow to think brighter thoughts, another appointment where you update your progress chart. Each round tightens the loop, convincing you that harder effort will finally bend reality. The truth is simpler and far more unsettling. The feelings you resist are not obstacles but guardians of the door. They hold the key fragments you must reclaim. When sadness surfaces, it brings the capacity for tenderness. When anger erupts, it carries the blueprint for boundary and power. When shame burns, it signals the place where self-respect was forfeited to keep belonging. The system taught you to medicate, suppress, or reframe these messengers into palatable neutralities. It never taught you to sit with them until they reveal the instruction they carry. The failure of popular remedies is not evidence that you are beyond repair. It is evidence that the approaches avoid the subterranean chamber where repair begins. Real work starts where language falters, where the body trembles, where memories blur into sensation. It unfolds in awkward silences, in tears without narrative, in shaky breaths that refuse to steady on command. It is nonlinear, inconvenient, unattractive on social media, and absolutely alive. Stay with the discomfort rising now. Feel the impulse to open a new tab in search of the next technique. Notice how quickly the mind reaches for purchase, for something to do, for another plan. Reliance on quick solutions once kept you safe when depth felt impossible. Honor that protection, then let it soften. The very craving for fixes is proof of vitality, longing for release. That longing will guide us deeper in the next part, where the hidden architecture of complexes and shadow will come into full view. There, the lock finally makes sense, and the outline of the key becomes impossible to ignore. If these sentences cut through the noise and land where the ache lives, subscribe to this channel. This space is not built for everyone. It is for those who can no longer pretend the polished answers work. By subscribing, you help push this conversation past the algorithms that favor quick fixes, letting it reach others who sit in the same silent struggle. The more voices that gather here, the harder it becomes for half-truths to survive. Join now, and together we keep the door open for every person who is ready to meet their pain without disguise. The parts of you that whisper in the dark will never sign the attendance sheet. They will not introduce themselves with polite handshakes in a session or appear under clean lighting in a self-development workshop. They are the fragments you pushed into exile the moment someone hinted they were unacceptable. Perhaps it was the raw anger that exploded when a childhood boundary cracked, the aching tenderness that seemed too needy in a family that praised stoicism, the wild creativity that felt ridiculous beside an overachiever's checklist. Those disowned voices did not vanish. They moved underground, collecting every memory of rejection, every tremor of guilt, every verdict of shame, and from that subterranean place they began to shape the surface of your life. This hidden collective is what Carl Jung named the shadow. It is not evil. It is simply everything you believed would cost you love or safety. The irony is brutal. In burying those qualities, you lost access to their healthy expression. Repressed anger becomes passive aggression or numbing fatigue. Repressed desire resurfaces as compulsive cravings that never satisfy. Repressed grief hardens into cynicism that masquerades as wisdom. The shadow does not disappear. It compensates. It leaks through tone of voice, body language, impulse purchases, sudden cold silences. You glimpse it when you overreact and wonder who took the wheel, when you binge on distraction though tomorrow's deadline looms, when a harmless comment slices deeper than logic allows. That fleeting flare of intensity is the shadow announcing that it still breathes. Inside the shadow live complexes, clusters of charged memories and emotions bound together like knots in a fishing line. Each complex has its own script, its own soundtrack, its own emergency plan. Imagine a child who learned that love arrived only when achievements impressed the adults. Decades later, an unfinished email or an unwitnessed accomplishment triggers a surge of panic. The body tightens, the mind starts rehearsing explanations, sleep retreats. The adult believes the crisis concerns the current project, yet the complex is replaying an old story. Perform flawlessly or risk abandonment. Another person, shaped by unpredictable explosions at home, might carry a vigilance complex. Sudden noises or ambiguous expressions fire the same physiological alarm that childhood walls once echoed. These complexes operate faster than thought, hijacking present experience with archaic data. They form an underground committee that votes on every decision, while the conscious mind writes neat rationalizations to conceal their influence. Complexes are not pathology. They are survival algorithms coded in a time of limited resources. Their original mission was protection. They interpret silence as danger because silence once preceded betrayal. They perceive happiness as unsafe because happiness once invited sabotage. You do not control when a complex activates. You only control how willingly you recognize its presence. Denial strengthens it. Curiosity loosens it. The moment you name the pattern in real time, you add new wiring to the neural map. You become witness rather than puppet. Yet this witnessing is tricky because complexes shield themselves with the illusion of control. The illusion of control is the master camouflage of wounded parts. It dresses up as self-improvement. It memorizes mindfulness quotes. It tracks macros, counts steps, schedules productivity sprints, and posts about discipline. None of those actions are wrong by themselves, but when they serve to outrun inner chaos, they become another fortress around the shadow. The voice of control says, "Fix yourself faster so nobody sees the cracks." It equates perfection with safety, calm with virtue, success with worth. Every slip then confirms the old terror. Unworthiness waits beneath the polish. The person who seems impressively organized may secretly be a hostage to anxiety. Control becomes the acceptable mask of fear. Trying to fix yourself is often an elegant form of refusal. It says, "I will accept myself only once the troublesome aspects are erased." The unconscious hears the message. Parts of me are not welcome at the table. Those parts double their efforts to be heard because the psyche's deepest drive is wholeness, not efficiency. The more strictly you police your internal neighborhood, the more determined the outcasts become. Anxiety spikes the night before an important event. Rage erupts in traffic after a week of forced civility. Compulsive scrolling numbs the ache that pristine routines could not silence. In each episode, the shadow announces that the door you locked is still connected to a living room full of exiled guests. That door is the real lock. It is forged from your defenses, your narratives about what feelings are permissible, your learned strategies for avoiding shame. It stands inside you, not in front of you. You fortified it for excellent reasons. It kept overwhelming memories at bay when you lacked the capacity to process them. It maintained social ties by hiding impulses the tribe judged unacceptable. The lock is not the villain. It is the loyal sentinel of your nervous system. Yet loyalty turns rigid when the past is allowed to dictate the present unchallenged. The lock that once saved you now confines you. Here lies the paradox. The harder you try to break the lock, the stronger it becomes, because it is you who created it to survive. Every aggressive swing, whether through hyperpositivity, overanalysis, or ruthless discipline, registers as a threat to the younger self who posted that guard. The unconscious tightens security protocols, amplifying symptoms to keep you from dismantling the very structure that guaranteed continuity. Insomnia flares, procrastination intensifies, relationships wobble. The conscious mind calls this sabotage. The unconscious calls it self-preservation. But there is something even more shocking. The very thing you fear might be your liberation. That panic you label as weakness is the gateway into the room where the wounded child still waits. That anger you deem dangerous contains the heat needed to melt numb resignation. That grief you postpone holds the precise tenderness required to bond fragmented selves back into coherence. The lock guards the treasure it appears to deny. Every symptom is a breadcrumb. Follow the ache and it leads inside, past the tidy foyer of socially approved feelings, down into the cellar where the shadow pieces linger. They hold creativity, intimacy, authenticity, the electric spark that turns existing into living. To meet them, you must shift from battle stance to receptive stance. Curiosity replaces conquest. Somatic attention replaces conceptual analysis. You notice a surge of irritation, and instead of shaming it, you track where it lives in the body. Warmth in the chest, tightening in the jaw, heat behind the eyes. You breathe as if you are willing to feel it fully, even if it roars. You treat the sensation as a traveler with a story rather than a trespasser. Gradually, the body learns you will not exile its message. The complex senses a different authority at the helm, one that chooses inclusion over suppression. Dialogue emerges. The angry energy might reveal a memory of boundary violation. The grief might unveil a moment of irreversible loss. The fear might expose a contract you signed in childhood. Stay small and escape attention. These revelations do not arrive neatly. They surface in fragments, images, bodily pulses. Your task is to witness without rushing into repair. Repair happens organically when the witness is stable enough to hold the storm. Emotional storms exhaust themselves in the presence of stable attention. The lock begins to soften, not through force, but through recognition. This work is not linear, not glamorous, not immune to relapse. You may integrate one aspect of the shadow and wake next month to realize another layer demands welcome. Complexes you believe dissolved can reignite under new stress. These cycles are not failures. They are spirals that revisit old wounds from broader vantage points. Progress looks like greater speed of recognition, shorter duration of hijack, increased compassion toward the part experiencing terror. Eventually, the line between self and shadow blurs. There is simply one field of experience moving in waves of contraction and release. Culture rarely rewards this invisible labor, yet its dividends impact every visible arena. Boundaries sharpen because the anger complex now informs rather than ambushes. Creativity blooms because latent desire gains a sanctioned voice. Intimacy deepens because vulnerability ceases to signal mortal danger. The nervous system shifts from perpetual vigilance to responsive readiness, saving immense energy previously burned in suppression. Life still contains grief, fear, uncertainty, but the war with inner reality ends. The lock becomes a doorway, recognizable yet freely swinging. Remember the paradox when old reflexes surge and urge you to tighten control. Take a breath and recall that every contraction is a historical page crying to be read, not shredded. Respect the lock for the years it kept catastrophe at bay. Then place your hand on the outline you now recognize as your own shape. Feel the subtle click as familiar exile gives way to cautious belonging. This moment often arrives not with trumpets, but with a quiet sense of alignment. A soft exhale where the body realizes no immediate threat lurks. That exhale is evidence of liberation, reclaiming ground where fear once ruled. The journey continues, yet the terrain has shifted. You no longer hunt solutions outside yourself, nor do you mistake control for safety. You walk with the shadow as companion, complexes as informants, vulnerability as doorway. The system that profited from your perpetual incompletion loses its hold. The inner architecture reveals a design that was always aimed at integration, never perfection. In the space where forced optimism once echoed, authentic complexity sings. The lock, once battered and feared, stands open, framing a path toward landscapes you have not yet imagined. Stay with this recognition. Let it reverberate through the choices you make today. Each small act of inclusion rewrites neural maps, alters somatic narratives, and whispers to the younger self that exile is over. The fear you once fled may still stir, but now it signals invitation rather than catastrophe. And each time you step toward it, the outline of the key glows brighter, confirming what was always true. The door opens from within, and you have begun to remember how to turn the handle. Picture the door again, tall and familiar, standing at the threshold of everything you say you want. On the far side lie the warm rooms of effortless intimacy, the quiet garden of peace, the winding corridors of creativity you have not yet walked. You can almost feel the air change when you imagine stepping through, yet the handle never turns, and the doorframe seems to thicken each year, as though the wood itself grows heavier on purpose. For most of your life you tackled that barrier, the only way the culture taught you. Break it. You gathered the shiny tools of positive thinking and hammered affirmations against the grain, hoping that a steady chant of light would dissolve hardwood. You tried numbing, sanding down the edge of every restless night with busy schedules, glowing screens, or a glass that tipped from one evening into the next. You leaned on perfectionism, carving intricate designs of achievement into the surface, convinced that enough flawless effort would impress the universe into opening for you. Each strike left a mark, but not the mark you wanted. The dents soon resembled accusations more than progress. What began as hope hardened into frustration, then into shame. Why can everyone else open the door? What secret hinge am I missing? Here is the truth you were never told. That door was never built to respond to force. It serves a different purpose entirely. A lock exists only because a key exists. They are forged from the same blueprint, mirror images shaped to meet with exquisite precision. The lock is not there to deny you. It is there to reveal you. It holds the silhouette of every part of yourself you placed in storage because someone, somewhere, called it too loud, too soft, too strange, too much. The missing curve on the left edge is the anger you muted. The narrow ridge near the center is the grief you hid. The delicate notch at the tip is the wild joy you relegated to rare occasions. Each contour of the lock corresponds exactly to a contour in you. That is why breaking never works. Every time you swing a tool at the door, you declare war on your own outline. You attack the very pattern the lock faithfully reflects, and your nervous system tightens in protest. The door feels harder, not because it despises you, but because it is defending the blueprint of your untouched wholeness. It will not allow entry until the shape on the outside matches the shape coded within. The harder you strike, the deeper the lock insists on integrity. Becoming the key means nothing less than retrieving each exiled contour and welding it back into place. It is not a moral task, it is an engineering task of the soul. You bend down and pick up the jagged piece of anger, still hot from neglect, and you dare to learn its language. You discover that healthy anger burns not to destroy, but to illuminate where dignity has been crossed. You polish the hidden shard of longing and find it points toward intimacy, not weakness. You cradle the forgotten curve of playfulness until it reminds you that delight is a vital sign, not a distraction. With every fragment integrated, the outline of the key grows clearer. You feel it in your body before you ever test the lock. Breathing deepens without instruction. The critical voice loses its monopoly on inner airwaves. Relationships shift, sometimes abruptly, because the role you played no longer fits the new shape. This is the awkward middle ground where doubt questions whether assembly is worth the mess. Stay. Every added contour produces a click inside the mechanism. The door recognizes the echo even before you do. Then comes the moment that feels both ordinary and seismic. You approach the door without armor, carrying nothing but the assembled shape of your full humanity. No banners, no trumpets, just the steady presence of someone who stopped disowning themselves. The key meets the lock with a soft alignment that feels eerily familiar, like a hand returning to its own glove after seasons apart. You turn the wrist, not with force but with gentle certainty, and hear the quiet release of tumblers surrendering. The wood does not splinter, it sighs. As the threshold swings open, it reveals more than opportunities or peace. What floods in first is recognition. The space inside was carved to your exact dimensions. The life waiting there does not demand a different personality or another level of achievement. It simply asks you to inhabit the rooms already designed for the person you actually are. And because the lock no longer guards against you, it can now guard for you, closing gently behind and keeping at bay the voices that once convinced you to fracture yourself in the first place. The lock isn't your enemy, it's a mirror. It holds the shape of the key, your true self. Every time you stand before it, you are invited to notice which contours remain missing from your grip. Not to judge, not to rush, but to gather. When disappointment knocks again, ask which fragment is calling for return. When envy bites, inquire what desire was exiled from the key's design. When fear tightens, listen for the younger piece of you still waiting to be cradled into belonging. This metaphor lives because it is practical. In everyday terms, it means choosing curiosity over condemnation each time a painful emotion surfaces. It means pausing before self-improvement kicks in, long enough to wonder whose definition of improvement you are serving. It means honoring the signals of the body, letting tremors speak instead of prescribing silence. It means setting boundaries that protect integration rather than performance, refusing relationships that demand you shear off essential ridges to fit a smaller mold. And the beauty of the design is this: as soon as you become the key for your own lock, you become a living invitation for others to do the same. Your presence tells a silent story. There is another way. People feeling for their own missing contours recognize the outline in you. Community forms not around shared masks, but around shared reclamation. The door you once battered now stands as an archway through which honest connection flows. So when the old urge returns to smash through by sheer will, remember what the lock is trying to show you. Step back, breathe, and trace the missing edge with compassion. Gather one more shard from the shadows and let it click into place. You do not need a stronger hammer. You need a truer likeness. And every fragment reclaimed brings the mechanism that much closer to its effortless turn. Stepping through the doorway does not end the story. It begins a new apprenticeship. The mind, trained to chase immediate results, urges a grand gesture that will certify worth once and for all. Integration refuses spectacle and favors steady presence. Daily life becomes the workshop, every mundane hour a quiet forge. You will assemble the key repeatedly, not because it keeps breaking, but because wholeness lives in motion. These practices will not crown you with instant enlightenment. They will give you unfiltered contact with the living edge of your own experience, and contact is enough. Contact keeps the key warm in your hands. Start with shadow journaling, a conversation written in ink rather than thought. Each evening, invite the day onto the page and describe the moment your stomach tightened in a meeting or irritation sparked at a harmless remark. Write the story the body told before the mouth found polite words. Then let the emotion reply in its own voice. Anger may speak in blunt bursts, envy in quick comparisons, grief in slow echoes. Do not edit tone or grammar. Every raw sentence restores a contour once sanded down for acceptability. When the pen lifts, read without judgment, as if studying weather patterns. Recognition already begins to loosen the knot. Shadow journaling opens the door to direct dialogue with exiled parts. Close your eyes and picture the younger self who vowed never to cry, or the adolescent who performed resilience to survive ridicule. Invite that figure to sit across from you in imagination. Speak aloud, honoring the cost of the vow they carried, and allow their reply to surface as a tremor, an image, a whispered phrase. Resist preaching or consoling. Offer witnessing instead. These inner conversations feel strange at first because they bypass intellect and meet the nervous system where memory breathes. With every exchange, you rescue another syllable of your history from silence. Next comes tracking triggers in real time. Carry a small notebook or record discrete voice memos when your pulse spikes, shoulders stiffen, or breath shortens. Note the place, the words spoken, the meaning assigned. Review these entries later as a cartographer studies landmarks. Patterns emerge. Perhaps authority ignites urgency, or playful teasing sparks defensiveness. Each pattern maps a complex. Naming it reduces its stealth. The trigger log is not a scorecard of failure. It is a map showing where the lock still protects unintegrated territory. Studying the map with curiosity turns ambush into invitation. Trauma stores itself in the body long after the mind develops neat explanations. Somatic awareness invites experience below the neck. Set a timer 3 times a day, close the eyes, and scan from crown to soles. Notice heat, tingling, constriction. Place a hand on the area that calls for attention and lengthen each exhale. Let sensation rise and shift without forcing calm. This practice teaches the nervous system that presence remains available during activation and that it no longer needs to leap into flight or freeze. Over months, the body begins to trust perception over suppression, and that trust becomes the currency you spend when deeper waves surface. Micro-rituals anchor the work inside ordinary rhythms. When discomfort awakens, step outside and feel both feet on the ground for 3 slow breaths. When delight flickers, pause consumption and let the feeling bloom before moving on. Light a candle at dusk to give grief permission to visit. Extinguish it at bedtime to signal containment. Such gestures take moments, yet train the psyche to remain in relationship with sensation rather than detour around it. Repetition carves familiarity, teaching the unconscious that the door stays open without flooding the house. None of these practices promises fireworks. Some evenings the journal yields dull sentences. The body scan reveals only numbness. The candle sputters without revelation. Celebrate that monotony. Integration resembles muscle building beneath clothes you hardly notice. Weeks pass, and a familiar insult no longer pierces. Months pass, and a boundary rolls off the tongue without tremor. Setbacks still arrive, spirals still revisit old ground, yet the floor of self-trust rises each cycle. Progress feels subtle until hindsight reveals tectonic shifts. Carry the tools lightly. They serve you. You do not serve them. When discipline turns rigid, loosen it. When resistance spikes, meet it with warmth. The aim is contact with the once exiled parts, not flawless adherence to a schedule. Over time, the practices weave into daily living, becoming attitudes rather than tasks. Traffic tests patience, meetings challenge authenticity, friendships mirror shadow. Each encounter becomes a practice room, each sensation a compass pointing back toward the key you continue to shape. Now stand at the open threshold and feel the steady floor beneath your feet. If you recognized yourself in these words, write in the comments, "I'm done running from pain." Let us see how many of us are ready for the truth. This declaration is not performance. It is a public handshake with your own shadow. Together we create a space where masks retire and real breath returns. The path remains long, uneven, magnificent, and utterly ours. This is only the beginning. Everything you felt today is the first door swing, a glimpse of rooms that have waited for you since the moment you started hiding pieces of yourself. More waits beyond the threshold, but only if you are willing to keep walking, willing to meet the next layer of shadow without flinching. Now lend your voice so none of us stands alone in the hallway. If you recognized yourself in these words, write in the comments, "I'm done running from pain." Let's see how many of us are ready for the truth. If you feel it's time to face your shadow, write, "My darkness is my strength." Let's build a community of those who refuse to look away. If you're ready to drop the roles, write, "Dropping the masks." We'll see who's done with pretending. If this video shifted something in you, write, "I accept my shadow." Let it stand as a commitment to yourself. Every sentence you type signals to someone scrolling in silence that courage is contagious. Together, we turn individual keys and discover the doorway was never meant for solitary passage. There's something even deeper we need to talk about, but that's for another time. Until then, keep the door open, keep the key in hand, and keep listening to the parts that finally dare to speak.